Hey guys, welcome back to another Monster Hunter video. Today we'll take a look at the new Mizutsune and Zoh Shia armors added with title update 1. Both of them come with some very unique skills that synergize very well with the new weapons added from the new monsters. However, is it worth it to invest anything in them? Well, I'm going to show you all the new skills, how they synergize with one another, and some heads up about how they actually work, as you may want to know all of this before heading in. So let's get started with the Mizutsune set. This comes with some unique abilities, one of which is the Mizutsune Prowess. This gives you Bubble Blight 1 and 2 if you go with the 2 set or the 4 set bonus. But at the 4 set that I tested, this prevents major Bubble Blight and ups evasion while afflicted. So this could potentially work great against somebody like Mizutsune himself. But the second effect, it triggers minor Bubble Blight by evading many times. So at the 4 set bonus, as you can see, I only need to dodge roll 3 times for the bubble dance to trigger, as well as all the other dependencies, as you're going to see in just a little bit. But unlike its major version, the minor bubble blight doesn't make your character slip. You're not going to fall on your back. You just get that effect on your character and then trigger any sort of ability that depends on having bubble blight active. In this case, it lasts 30 seconds for the level 2 version, and unfortunately, no, you cannot prolong it while it's still active. So you actually have to wait for the 30 seconds to end, and then you're going to trigger another instance of 30 seconds of Bubbly Dance 2. And that is why no matter what you do, if you're planning to use a Mizutsune set, you're pretty much going to have to also use a Mizutsune weapon, specifically because you get Slicked Blade from these weapons as well, level 2 and level 3 for the max versions. But level 3 Slicked Blade gives you a total of 30% affinity, but with a caveat. And that is that Bubble Blight isn't going to provide wetness on itself. If you want the extra 9% affinity, you will have to make your character wet, either by going in a puddle, in a body of water, or however you see fit. Otherwise, you only get the 21%, which is actually still good. So that 21% is going to trigger no matter what, as long as you activate the Bubble Blight, and it's going to last that 30 seconds, which means its uptime is going to be extremely good. Especially for non-pro players, this may be a legit very good playstyle to have, even if you're kind of sacrificing the 9% affinity you normally have from wetness. But if you do have wetness, then you just get even better, if it makes any sense. So in a sense, it's kind of like playing the opposite of what Maximum Might does. For Maximum Might, you have to keep stamina at all times at almost close to maximum. In the case of the Bubble Blight and the Slicked Blade, you're free to just consume stamina to dodge away, and you're going to get those extra affinities. Now besides that, the set also comes in with some other interesting abilities. One is a direct counter to Uthduna and also to Mizutsune itself, and this includes the Aquatic Oil Slit Mobility. Pretty much at level 2 it negates the effect of waves, and at level 1 it negates the effect of muddy streams, prevents you from being slowed down in water or oil slit, which definitely works. This means you pretty much no longer get the damage, neither the pushback, at least from what I was able to tell when fighting Uthduna with this build. I'm not sure if that was ever really a problem in that fight. The damage was really low and you could always just dodge roll through it, so having a full-on skill dedicated to that seems like a waste in my opinion, but yeah, you're free to go ahead and check it out. Now besides that, some of the other pieces over here do feature levels of burst, so if you're going with a full-on burst build, it can definitely be worth it to go with this. You can also combine it with some of the new items like the Numinous set, which also gives Coalescence. That works really well, by the way. So the way this interacts with Coalescence is very interesting because yeah, Coalescence increases elemental attack power and status effect after recovering from blight or abnormal statuses. And this means that Coalescence will always trigger the moment your Bubbly Blight will expire, which they always will at the end of those 30 seconds, which means you're going to have a pretty good uptime on the Coalescence as well. So from what I can tell, it seems that Capcom is doing its best to bring elemental builds back into the spotlight. However, this isn't going to be a build that replaces any of the metas. It can just be a fun little thing that you can have along the way, give it a try and see how the synergies work for you. You're not going to be very far behind the meta builds either, because the weapons are also pretty decent. They do have a 15% affinity, so they do favor that. But with some of the nerfs on the Corrupted Mantle, which now only gives you like 10% affinity instead of the 30 full max that it used to give, This kinda compensates for that to still reach high affinity, but with a side build that comes with an interesting synergy. Besides that, the raw attack on the Mizutsune weapons is only a couple of reinforcements behind what we normally have in the Artian category, so it's still going to be lower in terms of damage, but not so far away that it's completely out of the question. You can still probably use this and extract some really good DPS and timers out of it. However, we also have to talk about Zoh Shia armor, and this one comes in with some very interesting effects. I would say that this is going to probably be a little bit weaker than the Mizutsune set, even though it does look absolutely incredible. But, and there's a big one, you're going to get some very good pieces over here that can fit into the current meta builds. You're going to notice that quite a few of these pieces come with some very solid points into stuff like Agitator. Some of them have Counter-Strike and all of that, so you can definitely mix and match some of these sets to better reach meta sets much easier, even if you're not looking for the active Zoh Shia pulse skills. But speaking of that, here is the set bonus. Super Recovery 2 is what you get at 4-piece. Zoh Shia allows the health gauge to continue to recover up to the maximum value, even if there is no red portion. And I have found that recovery to actually not be too shabby. It's actually pretty good. It constantly goes in the background, so if you're damaged, you can just run laps around the boss and eventually you're going to heal up. It's not like completely quick. I'm pretty sure that this is going to work really well with recovery up or anything that buffs recovery over time. So this includes food as well if you want to stack it like that. Is it going to clear out bosses quicker? Not really. You don't really get any bonuses to damage from it, but it can be a good survivability tool if you're aiming for that. However, there are some major advantages to some of these pieces individually. Specific, the chest piece is probably going to be part of many meta sets from now on because it gives you rank 2 Agitator and also a rank 3 decoration slot, which means it pretty much completely replaces the previous Blanco male beta that only had a rank 2 decoration slot. So this one is going to come in handy if you want all of that, but also the benefit of maybe slotting in another level 3 decoration, or maybe just have the liberty to choose whatever you want. And the same goes, by the way, for the waist. In this case, you also get a level 2 Agitator, you also get a Coalescence, which is useful in many builds, but you also get a rank 2 slot in case you want to replace a Blanco waist that only had a rank 1 and a different secondary skill. Literally, this replaces that completely if you happen to have any meta build that makes use of those. But on a final note, we also have to talk about the new weapons from Zoh Shia, and they feature a very interesting ability. Well, before we go over the ability, check out the stats on them. They are pretty much on par with the Artian weapons. 5% affinity, 220 attack in this case, as I have a lance over here, pretty much on par with my Artian version. It's just that it has dragon elemental damage, and of course its slots are not going to be as great, so it's still going to be behind Artian weapons, but it's damn very close compared to every other weapon we had so far. However, what's so very interesting about this is the White Flame Torrent, and this works pretty much like a secondary random hit that you get actually way more often than you think. So this is going to be the White Flame Torrent, chance to deal additional damage after landing an attack, activate skill effect when used with Scorcher, does not stack but adds extra fire damage. So if you use Scorcher, it's just going to get extra fire damage. But for every other weapon, it pretty much triggers this really cool white flame. It's very distinctive, by the way, and even the damage number will have a distinctive color that you cannot miss. So when it triggers, at least from my testing, it seems to always deal 50 damage. I'm not sure how it scales for now, but for some of the builds I've tested in the end game, it seems that the damage was about 50. So it could be lower if you are not yet at that stage with the max upgrades. But what's interesting about this is that the White Flame effect actually triggers relatively often. Now, I'm pretty sure that there's a different chance to trigger for each of the weapons, so that both the slower weapons and the faster weapons have a somewhat comparable amount of triggers, let's say, per minute. So just to give you an example, when I was testing this on the Greatsword variant, whenever I would use charge attacks, for example, it was almost triggering on every hit or every other hit at maximum because of the slower attacks. whereas something like the lance would require anywhere from 6 to 12 attacks to actually trigger that, but it wasn't necessarily always the case. Sometimes I would trigger one right after the other if I was lucky enough. So probably there's no internal cooldown on it, or if there is, it's probably one attack max, because I was able to trigger them relatively close to one another. What I think changes, but it's very difficult to test, is that internal chance for the effect to trigger. Again, I'm assuming that Capcom is trying to normalize that chance to trigger so that all of the weapons are viable in their own right. Now, one more thing I want to cover about the Zosia armor, because I just think it's so unique and awesome, is that you get pretty much 2 to 4 armor sets into one. So if you go with the normal sets, you have the combination of darkness and light. You will see a half-corrupted angel or a half-corrupted demon. In the case of each of them, they both look really awesome. But you can mix and match these. So if you want to go full on demonic form and just have the tendrils going on both top and bottom, you can mix and match the male version with the waist and the bottom from the female, and you're pretty much full on Cthulhu. Looks really awesome, and you get the extra bonus like darkness effects on the waist as well. But if you want to go pure angel, for example, you can couple the female version and then combine this with the waist and the legs from the male variant, so vice versa pretty much, which is going to give you the angel variant. I'm probably going to rock this one because it looks really awesome. You kind of get the wings, you get like all of the fluffy stuff around you and feathers and whatnot. So I think that this is some of the coolest armors I have ever seen. So I cannot wait for some of the other stuff that Capcom has in store. But yeah, that's pretty much it with the video. Let me know down below in the comments if there's anything else that I missed. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and until next time,